Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of ClueCon Weekly. This week with us, we have Navendu Pottekkat from the API 7 project and maintainer of the API 6, Apache API 6 project. Thank you for joining us today, Navendu.
Thank you, Luca. Thank you for having me in the show. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, yeah, me too, because I'm very curious about what kind of projects you've been up to. It looks like it's all pretty advanced stuff, and I'm curious. But first of all, could you give us a quick introduction about yourself?
Sure. So I'm from India. I'm from south of India in a coastal state called Kerala. And yeah, for me, I think I'm relatively new in this software space, even though I have been coding for coding since I was in high school. I chose it as my career pretty recently. And I do open source stuff. I have been doing open source stuff ever since I started uh, programming. So right now I work on the Apache Foundation's API 6 project. So API 6 is basically a cloud native API gateway, which I guess we will talk about uh, as we go along in this talk. So yeah, and yeah, my role is as a developer advocate, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I enjoy writing open source code, and I enjoy maintaining open source projects.
Nice. And what's your main project these days?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, it is the Apache API 6 project. So API 6 is an API gateway. So an API gateway is basically a front end for your backends. So an API gateway basically handles all your traffic to your backend services. So you can have multiple APIs, you can have multiple services running in your backend, and your client applications can contact or can talk to your backend through this API gateways. So in API gateway sits between your client applications and your backend. It has all sort of features, like it does traffic control, it offers authentication features, it has security features, all sort of things. So yeah.
Nice. And well, could you give us a quick example of how you will do API 6? Like where's the place API 6 occupies in a stack?
Yeah, so historically, like ever since Apache released the original Apache project, right, the Apache server, uh, people like the software architecture and the infrastructure has been evolving. Nowadays it is moving much more closer to a cloud native space. So more of your application are sitting in the cloud, and your application is let's say it's decentralized, and it is comprised of multiple services. So when we are talking about a tech stack, the API 6 is like a dedicated server that handles all your traffic. So when you come to a cloud native space, so if you are deploying your application in something like a Kubernetes cluster, what API 6 is as an ingress controller. So instead of it handles all the north south traffic into your clusters. So basically, all traffic to your applications go through API 6. Oh, I think you are not audible, Luca.
Sorry. I meant to ask, what's the story of the project? I was looking at the GitHub repo and it looks like it's quite it's been around for a while.
Yeah, the project was started almost 3 years ago, and it originated in China, and it basically the API gateways have been around since a long time, even if
Mhm.
there wasn't it wasn't officially tagged as API gateways. People have been using servers as API gateways, as like the back and for front end pattern is like it's been here for a long time. But the project stemmed out of the need for having a more performant API gateway, a more distributed API gateway, an API gateway that is suitable for the current cloud native needs. So, like compared to like the some of the other API gateways around the space during like a couple of years ago, API 6 was more performant. So a key ideology behind API 6 was to make it highly performant, and it also to make it distributed. So like instead of relying on like a single database to store all your configuration, API 6 relies on a distributed database like called HCD. So all your configuration is distributed, all your configuration is spread across a cluster. So that sort of thing. So that is how the project came about, and it was eventually donated to the Apache Software Foundation, and now it is one of the popular Apache Software Foundation projects, and it has a lot of users in China. So what we are trying to do, like, or what I'm trying to do is to uh, get API 6 in the hands of people outside China, so people all over the world can come and use API 6. And yeah.
Well, that's cool. So that's, I mean, I'm looking at the webpage. Sounds like it's used for Ingress, for Kubernetes. It's used for a few interesting use cases. It can be, there's a lot there. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your role, though. You are a developer advocate. And that's a role that encompasses many different things. And since we're trying to keep the show about open source, about people, how people can be successful with the projects, about how we can help them be, I mean, have more users, more contributions, and whatnot. First of all, what do you do as a developer advocate, and what do you think open source projects need to do to be successful when they're talking to developers?
Yeah, so my job is quite loosely defined. So I'm a developer
Hmm.
advocate, and we are still a small company, and we are still a small team. So I had some experience working with open source projects. So when I started here, like I started finding areas where where it needs my help, and I started contributing there. So one such areas was documentation. So
Hmm.
an important role of a developer advocate is to educate the developers who are using your product, and documentation plays a key role in that. So having up to date, having clear, having concise documentation is one of the things that I do. And talking about the role in general, I think education, like I mentioned, is a key part. And the other leg is of developer advocacy is community.
Hmm.
And as a developer advocate, I try to build communities around API 6, and I try to get more community contributors, more community users who are actively participating in discussions and actively participating in the project's roadmap, the project's new features, and things like that. So education, community, and then let's see. I also do a bit of outreach, and so
Hmm.
I I I give talks at conferences, and now that like we are almost uh, going back to in-person events again, like we like I have a couple of trips planned, so I'll be traveling around the world talking about
Hmm.
API 6, like,
Yeah,
which is a really fun thing to do. And like
it is.
for your second
Uh,
part of the yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
So, and you also asked like how open source projects can use developer advocates effectively, right? Like how what open source projects needs to do in terms of developer advocacy. So for that, I would say that like I will paraphrase Apache Foundation's uh, like Foundation's quote that it is always community over code when it comes to open source projects. So having a healthy community, having a thriving community around your open source project is always needed for the project to be successful, and I think that is the main factor when it comes to a success of an open source project.
Yeah, so there's a few questions around this. Last few guests that were on the show actually all reported very similar issues. They were all mentioning that contributions to their open source projects have been going down, and they're having issues with getting people to interact and contribute. The most you get are weird bug reports on GitHub, where mostly people will just say, "Hey, I have an issue," and they don't even say what the issue is and or how it happened, or even have logs on it. Do you feel open source contributions have gone down in the last few years, and what can we do about that?
uh, on the contrary, like I feel like more people are contributing to open source, especially students and new developers, because in countries like India, like there are a lot of engineers, and people are starting to find that they can contribute to all these open source projects that are used globally. So you don't get that exposure when you are, like, let's say, from a small town in a small state in India. So open source provides a way for such people to do that. So I have been seeing a lot more contributions from students and new developers.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of new contributors, but I guess in projects in pretty big projects, I think people are starting to see a decline on core contributors and maintainers. So I read an article recently that said let's say big tech, the promotion process in big tech companies that fund or that have engineers working on these open source projects, that may be causing some decline in actual contributors and
Mm.
actual maintainers. So there are a
Oh,
lot of factors.
why is that so?
uh, it is because in most companies, in order to get a promotion, let's say from a senior engineer to, let's say, a level above that, you need to be you need to build you need to lead a team and build something that is quite big, that has a lot of impact, things like that. So what happens is, these people in these companies try to reinvent the wheel. So
Oh, I
even though
see.
there
Yeah.
is a yeah so instead of actually working on the issues, the features that a project need, what these open source contributors working in such companies, what they end up doing is they build something gigantic which the project might not actually need, just so that they can get a promotion. Again, like, this is not my opinion, I just read
Yeah,
this.
just an article. Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
still, I can see that happening. I think that's a mechanism that has some merit. Like it's pretty probable that it has happened. It's by no means the only. I mean, it's by no means not happening everywhere. And but I can see that happening. Like I've heard of people doing things like reinventing Redis, or literally rebuilding a web server out of Golang because they wanted to have their own super performant web server. So I'm sure that that's certainly certainly possible. That's happening. So, tied to this is a very important discussion that we've had going on the show for a while now. What do you think about those large companies that profit by using open source software and don't even acknowledge the fact that they're using it, to the point where sometimes you say, "Hey, I know this company was actually a very large e-commerce company, which I won't name, uses my platform," and you get a cease and desist letter from them because you breached security and you told people that they're actually using something. Is there even anything we can do about that? Like there's company making billions out of software we wrote for in good faith and for helping the world, and they don't even acknowledge they use
Yeah, I don't know, it's something like a lot of, I have seen a lot of maintainers and a lot of independent open source developers struggle with. Uh, Most famously, the creator of curl is being used in almost every piece of software that
Yeah.
that is being written. And like a lot of companies don't give him credit for it, and they also ask him to like build features that they want. So it is like but I also, on the other hand, but I also see companies like Apple, who are like just starting to be more active in the open source ecosystem. Companies like Microsoft was famously against open source
Oh yeah,
software.
they did a good job. Yeah, this changed a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, like I seen like there is a positive change happening. I think like only time will tell. Maybe like in a couple of years, like open source will be the norm, and people will start appreciating open source developers, and people will start let's say acknowledging them for their work. But right now, like it, like as you mentioned, like the situation is pretty difficult, and it is also putting a lot of strain on the maintainers. Like they are supporting software that is, like as you mentioned, like that probably is used by billions of users, like running a huge e-commerce company. But they don't get they don't get the reward, they don't get the any monetary benefits or anything like that. So that is really an issue. And like I don't know like how we will solve that. I think like uh, with some initiatives from these big tech companies, things are bound to change.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess it, Microsoft changed when their CEO and other executives changed. So maybe we just have to hope that someone comes on board that really helps. I still think that even if, I mean, it might sound very great, but even sort of naming and shaming them a little without naming too much or shaming too much does help. Like it's we have had instances where we know companies have literally been built, billion-dollar companies have been built around open source software without as much as acknowledging that was the case. I think without naming projects, I'm closer to the Elastic project. Is a very good example of that. Elastic, the search engine thing, the indexing
Yeah,
and
yeah.
search engine API. There have been entire companies that literally just Elastic with the load balancer in front, like API 6 and Elastic turned into a company, and they will not even acknowledge that exists, which is so weird. I don't know. It's a long topic. So, well, I'm happy to hear that, listen, your end contributions are not going down. Then it's probably a factor of some projects. I feel like some more mature projects maybe see a decline in contributions because there's not as much that's exciting to do left.
Yeah, that might be probably true. Yeah.
Like take
And like
Nginx. It's
yeah.
working. What does Nginx need anymore? I couldn't even name it. Like, what would I do with more Nginx features? It just does what it needs to do.
Yeah, yeah. And like on the previous discussion, like it is actually quite difficult. Like if even if you are starting and building an open source project, like there needs to, like if you are building a company on top of that, like you need to find some way to monetize it, right? So like you can't really complain when people are like monetizing open source projects, because like only if they monetize these projects and get some revenue, like they can support the open source alternative of the project. So yeah, like
Yeah, a good model that has worked so far is starting a company around the product. For example, SignalWire was more or less born around the FreeSwitch project, right? And it was built for to build an API and cloud version of FreeSwitch, and also many of the proceedings go into FreeSwitch, which has gotten more releases, more updates, more patches since SignalWire started. Everybody was worried at the start, but if you do it right, it can be done.
exactly, yeah.
Cool. So yeah, so obligatory question as a developer, I always ask this to everyone. Say you're very interested in what Navendu said on the podcast, and you're just starting out, like you're 18 years old, you're just out of school, you want to know where to start. How would you start if someone was interested in your area of experience, that is high throughput and networking and API gateways? Like what programming language will you learn? What else do we need to look at, and anything else?
Probably like if you are starting to learn programming, then I would suggest to learn C++ because it was the first programming language I learned, and like you like compared to something like Python, like C++ offers like it gives you a lot of in-depth knowledge of different programming concepts and that sort of thing. But even if you don't stick with C++ for a long time, like you can use that the skill you learn to transition into any other language, like let's say Golang or Rust when it comes to cloud native stuff. These languages can easily be learned from studying something like C++ or yeah. So do that, and then start building projects. That's what I would do. I was successful after I did that. So build a lot of stupid projects, build a lot of things that you find interesting, just push them to GitHub. Like someone from like halfway across the world might find that interesting, and fix a bug you had, things like that. Just put it out there. Build random things, build things you find interesting. Always learn by building things. And like once you do that, uh, if you want to get some real world experience, contribute to open source projects. There are a lot of, like when it comes to cloud native stuff, there are a lot of open source projects right now. And there is a foundation called CNCF, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, which is under the Linux Foundation. So CNCF hosts a lot of cloud native projects, and they organize a lot of internship programs through the LFX mentorship programs, Google Summer of Code, and a whole lot of other programs. So engage in those projects. You can always find things that you're interested in. So if you are interested in API gateways, there are tons of projects under that. And if you are interested in, let's say, uh, observability, like you want to work on something like Prometheus, Grafana, that sort
Mm.
of thing, like it is also open source. So you should be able to find really easy issues that you can pick up and start contributing. So, and like recently what I found is like a lot of projects are really warm and welcoming when it comes to new contributions. They want new contributors to contribute and like have like help them sustain their community, so you will always be welcomed. So yeah, contribute to open source and find
Well, that's how I
what
started.
makes
So
you.
I that's how
Yeah.
I started my journey in telecom. So I really agree. I really agree with you. I started by contributing to a little bit to Asterisk, a little bit to FreeSwitch, and to a Ruby framework called the Deershun, which we are using to
Mm.
do call control all the time. And here I am. So there's that's how things go generally. Well,
Yeah.
tied into that, one last opinion from you. How important it is, do you think, to get an actual education in computer engineering? I have my own opinion. That is, you need one, but uh, it feels like we had an age where a lot of people came into the programming world not from the classic gateways, but now that things are getting more complicated again, you need an education again, because otherwise, there's no way you're going to be able to navigate stuff.
Hmm. I don't know, like, so my educational background is I have a master's degree in computer science.
Yeah.
So
So
if I say that you don't need education, I am being a hypocrite. So yeah, like I guess so you can start as a software engineer even without an education. But in countries where like there is a lot of competition, so let's say India. So India has a lot of engineers, a lot of people with engineering degrees. They formally studied computer science and they have graduated. So in places like these, having a degree is definitely a way to a way to filter out, let's say, applications when you are submitting for a job, right? So having
Yeah.
a degree is definitely helpful. Like we are not at a point, at least in such countries, we are not at a point where people don't need to get formal education. People, like, if you are interested in computer science, just get a degree in computer science. Like even if you don't go to classes, like even if you are way above all those stuff, like you don't want to sit through the data structures class in the first semester, like
Hmm.
don't do that. Like do your own thing, but like you will get some good exposure, you will get some good knowledge, like if you formally study computer science. And on that topic, uh, like I thought like I couldn't learn anything from getting a formal degree, but like I learned a lot about software patterns, or like
Oh, yeah.
how to system design, like how to communicate as a software engineer, those sort of things. Like those were really helpful to me.
Yeah, you mentioned algorithms and data structures, and I think I mean I have a master's in computer engineering, so I I couldn't say you don't need. I feel like you don't need any formal education to actually learn to program, but at that point you only know one piece of the puzzle. You might be
Mm.
very good at programming, and that's why many front end engineers come from different backgrounds, because you only need to learn the JavaScript, the React that you need to get the page done. But and you don't need to contend with networking, optimization, and all the kind of stuff, because that's left to other more boring people who are sitting in a gray room, dark room with monitors in front and just console clicking away. Where you're a cool designer who is actually as an artist and an engineer at the same time. But yeah, if you want to do things like API6 or telephony in general, it's hard to get away from learning the nitty gritty stuff. Like even the data structures. I mean, I know what a linked list is, and it's helped me. It's not like the or the usual example of the bubble sort. The
Mm.
usual interview question, or can you implement a bubble sort algorithm in 3 characters blindfolded? And that's what they it's not possible, but they will still ask you. And so that's the thing. So learning about those really, in my opinion, really helps.
Yeah,
Well,
definitely.
I don't know if there's anything else which is the next conference you'll be speaking at?
I think the Linux Foundation's open source summit in Europe. It's on September, I think the third week. It's in Dublin, Ireland. So I have to I haven't like planned the trip or anything. So but I hope to be there.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So that's happy to see people go back to conferences. Speaking
Mm,
of
yeah.
which, ClueCon is coming back live in October in Chicago. So go look at ClueCon.com. I think there's still a special going on. And the call for paper is also still open as far as I know. It's probably closing very soon. So if anyone would like to submit something, let us know and we'd be happy to take a look. You included, like, I mean, if you'd like to submit a paper, it's always nice to have people from different walks of life. Plus, I think API6 is a very good position to be used in telephony, because we're always dealing with many different microservices at this point, especially now that you have to contend with the stir shake and stuff too. So there's certificate servers and signature server and myriad of other little services inside your own network. So that will really be a good position. So well, who knows? Maybe I'll see you there, or maybe I'll make it to the Linux Foundation meeting. I've never been there. It should be very fun. Have you ever been to FOSDEM in
No,
Europe?
no. Like no. I have only been, like, I think it was online the last time around. I might
Yeah,
have
it was.
been. Hmm.
Last 2 years it's been online. FOSDEM is
Hmm.
great. It's a mess. Like it's hard to follow with the actual content, but it's like 10,000 hackers descending on Brussels. So it's very fun.
Oh,
So I
I actually spoke at the last year's online for them.
so well, come back in person. It's gonna be
Yeah,
great.
of course, yeah. Like I like even when it was online, like it was really great. Like you meet a lot of like really enthusiastic engineers. Like that's really fun.
Yeah, we try to keep ClueCon close to that spirit, so it's mostly engineering. It's mostly about doing things. So it's been fun. Well, Navendu, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a super pleasure meeting you and learning about such an interesting project as API 6. I'm learning Kubernetes myself, so I'll probably look at adding API 6 to my own stack of knowledge soon.
That's awesome to hear. Like, yeah, I hope to see you in the API 6 community as well.
Cool. So, well, again, thank you so much for joining us today. And for the rest of the people, I'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.